Hey, what's happening, guys? How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel. And today I want to talk about what Nintendo's one tentpole game could be for this holiday. I'm sure most of us are already familiar with the fact that Nintendo's holiday currently is essentially completely barren. Other than DLC for the new Pokemon games, we don't know about anything releasing after Zelda in May and Pikmin 4 in July. I've talked about that a lot on my channel the last few weeks, and I'm sure most of you have been following that news and other conversations that have been going around out there as well. It's a very strange and curious situation. It's definitely a little bit disappointing, I think, when I speak for most of us. We want to know that the entire year is packed for all of the different platforms and all of our favorite companies. And for me and most of you guys, Nintendo is our favorite company, and so we would like to know that there's a big game or two releasing in the back half of the year and filling out their big holiday. But, of course, Nintendo is not showing up at E3, same with Sony and Microsoft. We're waiting to see if after Zelda releases we might actually get some kind of big summer direct. That, of course, presents an opportunity for Nintendo to tell us about a big holiday game. There is, however, also the chance that there's not any significant games outside of that Pokemon DLC to play this holiday. Very quickly, before I jump any more into what might be happening this holiday and what big game or two we might play if we're lucky, I do want to let you know that I am fast-tracking my way towards 20,000 subscribers here on this channel. It is a very exciting time because this year is my 10th year on YouTube running Rule of Two Review. I promise not to keep bombarding you guys with reminders about this subscriber goal, but man, am I excited to hopefully hit that in the next couple of weeks or couple of months. So if you're new to the channel, if you like what I'm doing here, I hope you will consider subscribing to the channel. So of course, the other curious thing about this holiday that you knew I was going to bring up in this conversation, right, is the fact that even though we don't know of any big game that we might be playing, and we don't know if we're going to get a Nintendo Direct over the summer, they might be making room for the reveal of the Switch 2. I'm going to keep saying it until 2023 is over, because until the year is over, I want to believe that we will see this thing revealed this year. And I think that there's a chance that Nintendo could be doing one of three things. They might be preparing to reveal a big holiday title we might play this year. They might be preparing to instead reveal the new console, let the holiday be slow in terms of games so that they can instead use that time to hype up the Switch 2 that might actually release next year. Or if we're really lucky, they could do both. Here's a big holiday game or two, and we're going to confirm the new console, and then wait for everyone to buy the new console sometime in 2024. But as much as I love talking about the Nintendo Switch 2, that really isn't the focus of the video today. I just want to talk about what some of the options are on the table for us to actually play this year if Nintendo is currently holding on to a secret high-profile game that would be a holiday tentpole release. I've got a couple of ideas. They probably won't really shock you, but I still think it would be kind of fun and exciting to talk about what those options could be, because if there's one thing we love, it's the return of Nintendo first-party franchises. And of all of the franchises that exist, there are a couple of big ones that I think could be the big surprise shocking game for this year. Now, it's worth noting, the first half of this year has had a couple of really great games. We've had a brand new Fire Emblem game. We've got a brand new Zelda game coming soon. Early in the back half of the year, we have Pikmin 4. These are big deals. Even Advance Wars is coming back. Granted, they're like remakes or reboots or whatever of older games, but it is still Advance Wars. And of course, we've also had Metroid Prime Remastered. So a lot of Nintendo's biggest and most important franchises, in many ways, have been touched already in 2023. So that gives us a little bit more of a narrow slice on what we could expect from other franchises. Again, if, and if is the key word, if Nintendo is waiting to reveal a surprise holiday game. So let's start off with the biggest and the most important and the most exciting, at least for me, which you already know, is going to be Metroid Prime 4. And I think it's also smart to start with Metroid Prime 4 simply because it is the only confirmed game we know Nintendo is working on, right? That's a Nintendo first-party franchise. We know that it was rebooted and given to Retro Studios back in 2019. So 6 years since reveal, 4 years since the game started its new development. So the game we will eventually play is not the game that started in 2017 when they revealed it. It is the game that was actually started in 2019 when it was given back to Retro Studios. So with that game on the slate, 4 years in development, bare minimum, right? I think that there is a chance Nintendo might be preparing the biggest wowzer whammo megaton moment ever and shock the world if they give us a big announcement over the summer by telling us, hey, that game Metroid Prime 4 you're waiting? Yeah, it's actually almost ready to go, and it is going to be the big game that you can play this year on the Nintendo Switch. Now, it is a lofty goal, and as the world's biggest Metroid fan, it is a pipe dream for sure, but I think it would be silly for us to rule it out. What I will say, though, before wrapping up the Metroid part here, is I don't really expect that to be the case. Is it possible the game releases this year? Absolutely. Would I put money on it releasing this year? Probably not. I lean heavily towards thinking that game will release in 2024. Obviously, part of my thinking has to do with the fact that I think more than likely the Switch 2 would release next year, and I've been saying for years that Metroid Prime 4 and the Switch 2 very likely will release together. Prime 4, probably a cross-generational launch game for the Switch 2. It's going to get a Switch version, but it's probably going to get a Switch 2 version as well, and if we're lucky, they'll release at the same time on the same day, and Prime 4 could actually be the killer app to play on the new console when it releases. Again, kind of just speculating here, but I think it's been making sense to happen that way for a couple of years, so that's what I would predict. But the point of this conversation is to let you know that there is a slight chance that it's Nintendo's big secret up their sleeve for this holiday, and man, wouldn't that be amazing if we were playing Prime 4 in 2023. So let's move on to the other Big Daddy scenario here, and I think we all know the biggest game that they could reveal would actually be a new Mario game. And there's been discussions about a new Mario game for a while, some rumors if we want to call it, not really substantial rumors per se, but there have been people claiming that these are rumors, that it could either be a 2D or a 3D game. There has been talks about Nintendo trying to find a way to revitalize the 2D Mario kind of franchise or gameplay formula. And while that is extremely exciting, and I love 2D Mario, I was weaned on 2D Mario back in the NES days, right? I find it hard to imagine how you could change the 2D Mario formula more than what the new Super Mario Bros. Series did. And while those games were exciting at first, they definitely have overstayed their welcome in my opinion. A new Super Mario Brothers game wouldn't personally get me all that excited. I mean, I would definitely be like, okay, I'm going to play it because it's Mario, and I'm sure it would be good. But I would either want some kind of new, crazy, out there 3D game or some surprise spin on a 2D game that just is something that we couldn't imagine that actually would make it feel fresh. But more than that, I think the thing we would all really like to see is the new 3D game, right? And what's really neat is that in a world where Nintendo surprised us and said, hey, it turns out we have a huge game this holiday, and it's the new Mario game of all things, that means they would kind of be repeating the 2017 launch year of the Switch in a sense, because Breath of the Wild and Super Mario Odyssey launched that year as well. Also, Fire Emblem Warriors came out that year, so if you add Fire Emblem Engage into the conversation, that happens. But regardless, if we focus on Zelda, they would get a Zelda and a Mario game in both 2017 and this year if they went for that. But outside of that, I just think that, you know, we've talked about, does a Mario Odyssey 2 make sense? I don't love Mario Odyssey as much as other people. However, I think a sequel to Mario Odyssey has a chance to be phenomenal, and it is the kind of game that I think is designed to be perfect to have a sequel. I mean, again, Odyssey is not my favorite Mario game, but I think that a sequel could be even better and is a really exciting prospect. So I would be over the moon, no pun intended, for a sequel to Mario Odyssey. But it would be great if they surprised us with a Galaxy 3 or just some other brand new spin on the 3D Mario formula, right? When you look at the big 3D Mario games, you have 64, you have Sunshine, you have the Galaxy games, you have Odyssey. I think that each one of those brought unique elements to the table. And so if we didn't get an Odyssey 2 and we didn't get a Galaxy 3, I would welcome some other weird, crazy spin. And I don't even know, maybe Mario's got like a gun and it's like a first-person shooter or something. I'm just kidding. They would never do anything like that. But I'm just like spitballing the idea that they would have to change up the formula if it's not a direct sequel to another series. So when you think about the best-selling possibility for a holiday title, I think a new Mario is definitely in the cards. Now, a unique franchise to discuss is Donkey Kong, because it might not make the most sense to a lot of people to say, oh, a new Donkey Kong game, maybe that being the big holiday tentpole title. It's not the kind of title that feels traditionally like a big tentpole holiday release, but I think that here in the 7th year, where the biggest game of the year is already going to have released in May, that being Tears of the Kingdom, they're following it up with another smaller tier franchise, but with an exciting entry in Pikmin 4. And I think Donkey Kong, I mean, here's the thing. Donkey Kong is a bigger tier franchise and a longer running franchise than Pikmin, definitely. But I don't know if it's ever really crossed that line into one of the highest selling and most successful, right? I mean, Donkey Kong and Mario, you could argue, are the same franchise, but they're also not, right? Mario games are not the same as the Donkey Kong games and Donkey Kong Country games, right? We've had Donkey Kong 64 in 3D. We've had all of the Donkey Kong Country games and the older Donkey Kong games that did have Mario in them, to be fair. Jumpman. You know, so there is that crossover, but Donkey Kong has kind of carved out its own niche. The same way Yoshi has, right? Like Yoshi games, there's a couple of those, and those are like Mario spin-off titles that are still Yoshi games, and I think that that's what Donkey Kong is. And so there's been rumors for a few years now about a new Donkey Kong being made. Would it come to Switch? Would it come to Switch 2? I don't really know. I would like to see it on Switch 2. I think it could make a great year one launch title for the Switch 2, right? Maybe in the first like 6 to 8 months, that becomes a big game that releases. But could it also release this year as a surprise holiday title? Yeah, I think so, because again, there's been rumors for a long time about Donkey Kong. Similar to the 2D Mario discussion, last year, or was it maybe even the year before in 2021? I think it might have been actually 2021. I think I remember discussing this like on podcasts and on rumor videos before Metroid Dread was revealed. I might be wrong on my timeline. I'm just riffing off the top of my head here. But we'll say the last year to 2 years. There was discussions that, coincidentally, the Mario Odyssey team, the internal Nintendo Mario Odyssey team, was working on a new 2D Donkey Kong game. And that they didn't want it to be part of the Donkey Kong Country lineage. It was going to be something different. But just like the 2D Mario discussions, maybe they're trying to find a new unique spin on 2D Donkey Kong, which personally would make me extremely excited. Could Nintendo also revive Donkey Kong in 3D? Yeah, I think that there's a chance that they could do that. And while I think, here's the thing, when I think about Donkey Kong, the gameplay style that excites me the most is really 2D. And weirdly enough, even though the Nintendo 64 is my favorite console of all time, and obviously Rare was killing it on the N64, and I loved all those games, you know the one I never played? It's Donkey Kong freaking 64. I don't know how or why, but it's just a game in my 42 years of life. 64 is my favorite console ever. I never played Donkey Kong 64. I wish I have, and one of these days I might go back and just buy myself a copy and actually play it. And I think I can put myself back in that 1996, mid-90s era and enjoy it for what it is, because I have great nostalgia for that era of games. But I've never played it, so I don't actually have any hands-on experience with 3D Donkey Kong. But when you look at what Nintendo achieves with some of their best 3D games, like obviously Zelda games, Metroid Prime games, right? My favorite franchise. You look at the Mario games in 3D. Recently, Kirby made a great transition to 3D with the Forgotten Lands, which is just an absolutely spectacular game. That floored me way better than I expected. And I think that there's a great opportunity for Nintendo to make a 3D Donkey Kong game that either borrows from the open world style of like a Mario Odyssey kind of thing, or if they went more traditionally level-based, like with Kirby. OJ Player Essence actually mentioned that as an idea in his video, and I thought that was really smart. And I love the idea of a 3D Donkey Kong game that way. And it's unique timing because there are a lot of people talking about different conversations around if Nintendo might actually be making a 3D Donkey Kong game. I don't know if we have enough to go on to actually think that that's true, or if it was true or whatever. I don't really know how I feel about that stuff. But as an idea, a 3D Donkey Kong game on the current Switch this year, yeah, I'd love to see it. It's not as big of a tier of a release, I don't think, as a Mario or a Metroid game, but I think it could be possible, and 2D or 3D, I would love to see it. There's obviously a lot of franchises like Luigi games or another Animal Crossing, Punch-Out, you know, there's a lot of things on the table. Kid Icarus has been talked about for a long time. I'd love to see any one of those back for a holiday title this year. But again, in a world where Nintendo's holding on to a secret holiday title that they haven't told us about yet, I think these three franchises immediately make the most sense. Metroid Prime 4, because we already know that game is being made. a new Mario game, 2D or 3D, or a new Donkey Kong game, 2D or 3D, because that has been in the rumor cycle for a couple of years, just makes a lot of sense, man. Now, a Star Fox game is one I just barely see as a possibility as well. I really wouldn't put money on it, but it's just a franchise that hasn't been touched on the Switch that... And I mean, Starlink doesn't count. It was a good game, but that's not what I'm talking about. You know, I think that it's one of the only other ones that I could see being like the 1% chance, right, of these other three I'm talking about, to be this surprise reveal for a holiday game. But I don't know. I love Star Fox Zero, but it did hurt the reputation for a lot of people. So I think Nintendo will revive Star Fox, but I don't think they would risk trying to make it the big tentpole game. Right now, when I look at the back half of the year being open and empty, I really mostly focus on a big game like a Prime 4 or a Mario, or I look at them just not having a big game and relying on revealing the Switch 2 or new hardware. Even a new Mario Kart game like Mario Kart 9, I gotta tell you guys, I mean, that doesn't make sense for this year because the Mario Kart 8 DLC is already going to go until the end of the year, so I just don't see them doing Mario Kart this year. I would bet almost my entire house on the fact that Mario Kart 9 is going to be a launch year title for the next Switch. I don't think it's going to be a launch day game, but I do think it could be in the first year. So Mario Kart doesn't make sense either, you know? There are options for like other ports and remasters. You know, I recently discussed the year of the GameCube. I think Metroid Primes 2 or 3 might be showing up in some fashion this year. I think there is definitely something to the Zelda ports. Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, those make a lot of sense. I also talked about Star Fox Assault maybe getting a port, a remaster, I should say. F-Zero GX could also be a great opportunity for a remaster, or even a new entry this year, if I'm being honest. But, you know, so those things become possible. Monolith Soft is working on a game. But I just feel like, given the emptiness of the back half, like I said, to me it's either Metroid Prime 4, a Mario game, or Switch 2. Donkey Kong is kind of the outlying possibility, and I would love to see it. But I mostly put my money on those other three options. And again, if we're lucky, maybe we get a Switch 2 reveal and Prime 4. And a Mario game. You know, maybe something like that happens. So it'll be interesting to see. We've still got the rest of the year to play out. Once Zelda releases, I think that's going to be the first opportunity for Nintendo to surprise us with big announcements. So we can look forward to what happens after May 12th. And so for now, this is what I think the back half could look like.